So this group initiated in 2016. And the involvement of the different members can range from just on social media. So we have Facebook and Instagram page with about 1,000 members each, or attending different field days, or also engaging in participatory research. Also this meeting. So a lot of you that are attending the meeting today are new to this group, but you're welcome to join and participate in any one of these platforms. So the intentions for creating the Dry Farming Collaborative was to be very inclusive, allow for different levels of participation, and engage in value both experiential and scientific knowledge. So this is very much a grassroots group and approach. And this slide is my attempt to illustrate how I came into this work, as well as how it has evolved over time, while acknowledging that dry farming is not a new concept. So before the rise of dams and aquifer pumping, drip irrigation, and central pivots, people were farming within the constraints of their natural environment and by necessity, so for survival. So there's a lot we can learn from reconnecting to the roots of dry farming, and we still have the opportunity, and we will have the opportunity this morning to hear from multiple speakers highlighting these stories and the history of dry farming. So long before I even learned dry farming specialty crops was a thing, which was about 2012. So I started my job with OSU in 2011. I started learning and meeting people who have been practicing dry farming of specialty crops in about 2012. Looking here at the timeline on the screen, so I work with OSU Extension Services, Small Farms Program, and I work with a lot of landowners on land without water rights or limited water availability. So water was an issue with multiple new and beginning farmers I was working with. And so I did case studies with farmers who had been practicing dry farming. One in his 70s that had been dry farming for 30 years, and then coordinated with Community Alliance with family farmers down in California to visit with other dry farmers down there. So after doing some case studies and learning how people were dry farming, what crops they were growing, what practices they were using, I decided to try and implement a demonstration in 2015 in Corvallis. So at that point, 2015 turned out to be a drought year, and we had a field day that August. And from there, the Dry Farming Collaborative emerged. So a lot of people who had issues with water during that drought year, or had their well run dry or their irrigation restricted by the water master, were really curious about how to, for the future of their farm and the security of our food system, to explore growing with less irrigation, or in some cases, no irrigation. Joining me, like after about 2016, Alex Stone, Lucas Niebuhr, and Matt Davis have joined the team, and we're among the organizers today. And we started to engage people in participatory research. So we've had variety trials and site suitability study and a number of other research projects that have emerged since 2016. And a nonprofit organization, the Dry Farming Institute, emerged from the Dry Farming Collaborative to kind of expand on this work of empowering growers to thrive with less water. So I've been supporting and engaging in this work as a faculty member of OSU. So it's important to also acknowledge the roots of the university. So in this slide, I just wanted to highlight that, we've been engaged in this work since 2013, but the roots of dry farming go much deeper. So working with the university, so realizing we cannot separate farming from the land, learning the history of the land that we steward, that we farm, that we live on, is essential, just as we want to understand how land has been managed, its land use history. We also need to understand the connected human history. So as faculty with OSU Extension Small Farms Program, on part of the land-grant university system. Land-grant universities were established by receiving benefits of the Morrill Acts. So in Oregon, the Morrill Act of 1862 provided grants of federal lands to the state to fund the establishment of a public university. So the land could be used, sold, rented to support the university and its research. So in Oregon, that was 90,000 acres of indigenous homeland. The indigenous communities that lived on the land were forcibly removed and killed in the process of being relocated to reservations. So the land where I've been hosting dry farming demonstrations over here on the southwest corner of campus is on traditional homelands of the Marys River or Ampinifu Band of the Kalapuya. Today, the living descendants of these people are a part of the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde Community of Oregon. So in order to heal from this painful history, I feel it's important to acknowledge the displacement, the violence, and the exclusion that even continues as we speak. So OSU Extension Services was started in 1911, and we have a lot of work to do to build trust and equitably serve all Oregonians to fully address the history of the land. So this acknowledgement does not stand in place of the actual work that needs to be done. So we cannot separate farming from the land. So jumping ahead here to where we're at presently, we're used to having 50 or 60 people at our in-person event, and we have 190 people with us today from all over. You can see here on the map that we are kind of clustered here in the Maritime Pacific Northwest, West Cascades, but we do have people from other parts of the country, presenters that are joining us from Southwest, as well as some participants in the Northeast, and also a presenter joining us from Tasmania. So we're excited to have participation from outside of our little bioregion. So we, just to give you a snapshot of who's in the Dry Farming Collaborative, we did a survey in February with people that are in our Facebook group, our Instagram, and also our email list, because we've been growing for the past few years, but haven't really done a survey of who's in our group now. So we asked the question, are you a farmer? And you can see about 50% of the people in our group are farmers, but there are also people who are not farmers. There's a lot of gardeners and homesteaders in the group, as well as educators, researchers, people working with government and nonprofit, as well as students. When asked the question, why are you interested in dry farming? And everyone who registered also answered this question in our registration process. But you can see one of the largest answers here was climate change and water access, concern about the future of water access. Additionally, inability to irrigate. You can see at the top there's a lot of people in the group who simply don't have access to irrigation or are unable to irrigate their gardens or their farm. Conserving natural resources for future generations, and also these benefits of more flavorful produce or less weeds to manage. When asked the question, how many years have you been dry farming? You can see here that there's quite a few people, maybe 25% that haven't started, but there's quite a few, and even the biggest category, which I was really pleasantly surprised to see, have between 1 and 5 years of experience. And so that's about when, I've been implementing or practicing dry farming since 2015. So I'm also in this category, about 5 years of experience, I guess, going on my 6th this growing season. But you can see that picture on the right. That's what the Columbia River Basin looked like during the 2015 drought. So that's where I think a lot of it, this kind of shows that a lot of interest sprang up after that year. I also found it interesting here to see that there's not really the 10 to 20 years of experience range. There's nobody in that category, but there are old elders in our group that have experience dry farming, that have been kind enough to mentor some of the newer people in the group. So these are the different ways that people are engaging with the Dry Farming Collaborative. We have a lot of activity on the Facebook group, which we would like to explore a more unified platform in the future. I know some people are opposed to using Facebook. So we'll be looking for ways to unify our communication channels in some form in the future, but we're kind of spread out between Facebook, Instagram, and an email list currently. We also have field days every August and September, highlighting what some of these practices look like in the ground. We did do virtual field tours last year, and those are available on our website. Some people are purchasing dry farm crops. We are seeing more dry farmed or produce labeled as dry farm showing up at the markets and in our communities. And now I'd like to just highlight this, since there is quite a bit of dry farming experience in this group. We have a poll here that will show up like a word cloud as it's shown on this slide, but we'll be showing this a few times throughout the day. So Matt's going to share this in the chat box, the link and the code, but be curious, for those of you that have dry farming experience, please share with us which crops you're dry farming. You can see tomatoes are a pretty common one so far. I think there were 6 responses when I captured this screenshot to share with you. And in place, so we're not here in the same room together sharing food and having side conversations, but we wanted to try to create some virtual networking space. So we have these virtual bulletin boards that are Matt's going to be sharing in the chat box. So you can see there's already some things posted there, just announcements, opportunities, lessons learned, plans for 2021. This is our, aside from the chat box, this will be our virtual networking space today. In addition, the Dry Farming Institute, whom is the sponsor for the morning panel that we have on the roots of dry farming in the Western US, they're doing a strategic plan. And I'm also on the board, and the vision is to help growers thrive with less water. So as part of that strategic planning process, we would love to have your input on what the Dry Farming Institute could do for you. And with that, I would like to introduce our panel here. We are so lucky to have 3 speakers that can help share stories and history of dry farming in the Western US.